Das abscheuliche und verabscheuungswürdige Verhalten muss aus unserer Gesellschaft ausgerottet werden. The vile and despicable behavior must be rooted out of a society. Now I know it's kind of interesting that many of you are acting like you're surprised that people will try to denigrate the character of Dr. Justine Pierre. But guess what? I am not surprised. They've tried it before. And now the gentleman should realize that everything that he's saying is actually true. Because when you see they come at you in such vile and despicable manner, you know that what you're saying is true. They will never attack you if what you're saying weren't true. And in some respects, it is sad that this is the sort of climate that is being facilitated and in some respects being encouraged by the upper echelons of the NDC and NDC petty bourgeois society. None of this is done by accident. In some respects, it is done by encouragement, because that is how they maintain their power. To pit one sector of the population against another. And while you're busy fighting each other, they are sailing themselves all the way to the upper echelons of money and power. And you, some of you don't even get nothing for it. You do it because of emotions. You get emotional comfort. While they're getting rich, you're getting emotional comfort. Boy, you guys are cheap. So again, a gentleman that says or tries to denigrate PhDs or people who have achieved their doctorate in education, would you be surprised that he would not be happy if his followers are attacking Dr. Justine Pierre? In some respects, it's a very sneaky way of sucking them on to attack Dr. Justine Pierre. They feel justified. They feel they can do anything that they want to do and say anything that they want to say, even if it's the most vile and despicable things, because the leader of their nation is giving them cues as to how to conduct and behave themselves. So this is not an accident. This is not magically appearing from the sky. This is modeling of behavior. And you know what they say about kids? Because remember, that's his kids and that's his subjects. You remember what they say about kids? That kids learn more from modeling of behavior than what you say and tell them. So if his subjects, okay, see their king and their idol engaging in such behavior and denigrating PhDs, okay, or people doctorates, what do you think they're going to do? If he tries to humiliate, disrespect, and dishonor people who have achieved their doctorate, what do you think his followers would do? Again, and some of them have no restraint, so they might even engage in much more vile and direct vitriolic behavior towards these people who have achieved their doctorates. But the gentleman bears the responsibility, because the gentleman has set the tone for behavior. This is a sort of climate that exists in your society. And you have to realize, if you think that this is going to go away, that you're going to shoo it away like some sort of fly buzzing you off. No. Guess what? You have to confront with equal ferocity this sort of behavior. That is the only way that you are going to root it out of your society. You cannot build a society when you have people like crabs in a barrel trying to tear each other down. The net effect will be no progress. Okay? Or the net effect will be only a few will progress. You don't build a society that way. But many of them, it's all showmanship. When they pretend to care about building a society. In one breath, they come in and say, oh, look at this. We're giving away so much scholarship. And of course, they like the idea to make you believe that all of this emanates from them. Okay? So they get praises and they get adulation. And say, oh, look, we're giving away scholarships to so many kids. As if this is something new. As I have always told them, they're good, I have to hand that to them, at marketing. Right? They're good at marketing and showmanship, but that is the essential character and behavior of charlatans and imposters. They wouldn't be charlatans and imposters if they were not able to dupe you, if they were not able to bamboozle you, if they were not able to dangle things in front of you, okay, so you can get distracted, and in the meantime, they sailed all the way to money and power. You have been hoodwinked. And in some respects, I believe that the NNP and the other parties are responsible for this sort of behavior because you guys have allowed it to take root for a very long time. And as I always liken these sort of situations to the onset of pneumonia, as I said, and the onset of pneumonia is extremely difficult to recognize. But if you recognize it, you can easily cure it. But when it is in the end stage and you recognize the pneumonia, it's sometimes too late. And guess what? It's very easy to recognize at that stage, but extremely difficult to cure. So for all you elder statesmen, the Tillman Thomases, and all the others who used to pretend that they're masters and believers in some sort of transparency and some sort of dignity, now they have been unmasked. Now we truly see who they are because they stick around and probably for a couple of pennies are condoning this sort of behavior. Okay? As I always like to refer to Mr. George Brezan. Now, there was a gentleman of character. Do you believe that Mr. Nicholas Prophet would have said, these player-hating degree earners? Do you believe that Mr. Herbert Blaze would have ever said something like that? Do you believe Mr. George Brezan would have said something like that? And quite obviously, Dr. Keith Mitchell would not have said something like that. But in some respects, because the gentleman himself does not have a PhD, and the gentleman himself loves adulation. That is why every single situation, you will notice the gentleman tries to position himself to take credit for some sort of conferring of benefits to the Grenadian people. Now, this is the masterful act of a charlatan, to use other people's money, not his money, the Canadian taxpayer money, the lower classes and the middle classes who have broken their backs to create that money, and to pretend that it is his money to disperse back to the Grenadians. This is the game. Okay? So you adulating and you're praising and you're bowing down and you're worshiping in some respects a gentleman, okay, who through the machinations of government uses your money and then turns around and give it back to you, and you're praising the gentleman for doing that to you. What? I mean, again, I understand the kids. They don't know better, okay? You know, they're all confused. But you have grown people in society engaging in this sort of nonsense. Because the attacks on Mr. Justine Pierre, talking about the gentleman family background, and in some respects it's kind of paradoxical, okay? The attacks on the gentleman's, background or whatever, the kids don't know about that. These kids that probably might have said it, or if it was said by grown people, the kids don't know about that. That would have to be people who would have grown up with a gentleman. That would have to be people who are a little older, who would have known about the gentleman's story. Okay? So that tells you that these are grown people in the society or wherever they are that are trying to denigrate Dr. Justine Pierre. These are not the kids that are doing that. So what does it tell you about the total breakdown of leadership in the society? That grown people will engage in such behavior to try to destroy and disrespect this man in some respects. And I could understand, probably the gentleman might feel, I don't know of his temperament too much, but might feel some sort of distress when people would try to denigrate your family members. And you know what's interesting? I'll tell you an interesting story. In some respects, the people who did these little cottage industries and made candies and stuff like that, I'll have you know, for you younger people who don't know, we grown people have fun, amazing childhood memories of these experiences. All these snow ice and all these candy and chip and this and that and the other. Okay? And these people were able to do this and provide a service at a time when it was extremely difficult to do things like that. In some respects, these people were ahead of their time. So all the people who are doing these industries right now and are packaging them and have access to all the things they have access to, their progress has been built on the backs of these people who started this. So in some respects, we should honor and celebrate these people. But instead, they come along and try to show shade on this gentleman. And look at the gentleman. Look what he has achieved. In some respects, the man has achieved the highest of highs in the annals of education. And his own people will try to dishonor and disrespect the man because the gentleman is engaging in intellectual studies and intellectual exercises of his profession. Okay? You may disagree with the man, but you think it cool, do you think it kind to disrespect and dishonor the man in that sort of way? What sort of people have many of you become? And then you have the so-called leadership in the society does not address this. Remember there was a time, I think it was during the campaign season with John McCain in the United States. And somebody might have said something about Barack Obama. And he said, no, let's not go there. That is civility in politics. Okay? That is civility. But again, they do not want to promote that because they want to pit the Grenadian people against one another to their benefit. And some of you don't even understand that you're pawns in a very big game. And what did you get for it? What did they give you so that you could engage? What did they give you so that you could engage in such despicable behavior? What? Most of the time, nothing. But you like tearing down your fellow citizen. You cannot build a society that way. A matter of fact, the truth is clear. 90 to 95% of the people in Grenada, would have come off of some farm or plantation. The society was cut up and divided by the Europeans. It's like selling plots of land and a shuttle with the plots of land. So 90 to 90% of the people would have descended from some sort of parent or grandparent or ancestor that came from some sort of farm or plantation or section of plantation in Grenada. The other 5% would have been what we would have called in some sort of way back in the days, massive backward children. Okay? So they might have inherited wealth through blood or marriage. So 90 to 95% of the people in Grenada, especially people of African origin, would have in some respects, their parents or grandparents, great-grandparents or whatever, would have come off some sort of farm, working hard for the French or the British. And then you turn and you fight each other. And in some respects, we all tend to have the same history. And together, and only together, will have a brighter destiny. So when you look around, all the people that you may see that looks like you, that elevated themselves, they all, in some respects, would have come from very humble beginnings. Okay? What do you think all these names of these places are? Belmont, Monjaloo, Pedmata, Montparnasse, Willis. Just call all the names in Grenada. Boucherjou. A lot of the times, these names are names of the plantation owners. Okay? Just look it up. Look out George Grenada. And all these names of places would have been plantations. So it's very likely that if we were to trace our history, in some respects, our foreparents would have come from some sort of plantation. So when you throw shade at Dr. Justine Pierre, in some respects, you're throwing shade at your own ancestors. You're basically telling the world that you yourselves, okay, don't have respect for the strength and the courage that your ancestors showed to elevate themselves. And in some respects, we should salute Dr. Justine Pierre, okay, for his achievements and his courage and his hard work to get to the place that he has gotten to, in spite of all that he may have had to go through to get it, that he did it. So there is a man that many of the young people in Grenada should try to emulate. Not the ones who try to denigrate people who've achieved doctorates or PhDs. And in some respects, I believe that there is some sort of jealousy for the people who've achieved their PhDs. German says, don't worry them. They just know a lot about the little. But he has to understand, and I think the gentleman confuses himself and gets it twisted. Because for them to get to the stage where they know a lot about a little, they had to start off from a stage where they know a lot about a lot. So they went from their bachelor's, their master's, and then they get to their PhD. There's a transition. And of course you need people who can focus in certain aspects of discipline. So I don't know who this gentleman is trying to impress, or, again, I have to show some respect to one, real academic guy who actually confronted the situation. And then he got a lot of flack for it. But I know the gentleman. The gentleman is a man of character. The gentleman is a man of strength. I know the gentleman personally. The gentleman, in some respects, I would say, through family relationships, has been instrumental in helping me out when I was a kid. Okay? The gentleman was a couple of years ahead of me, and the gentleman is to help us out with math. Because he had been through the national, we used to call it national college, the IFE college, okay, before us, and the gentleman used to help us out. And it wasn't just him. It was young men like the late H. Hudson Austin's son, okay, who also used to give us pointers and tips, okay, because they were actually in the same year. But I say all of this to say that this is the level of understanding and brotherhood that we grew up with, okay? And now we look at this society, and how do you think we feel? How do you think we feel? Now you understand why that it's difficult for us to sit by and see this sort of crab in a barrel mentality continue in our society. We must take a stand. And I can go on and tell you tons of stories of support and love that was shown to me personally and many other people in the society in order to help them or assist them to grow intellectually and otherwise. So when you see us talking now, we are a product of all these people who showed us love and were instrumental in making us who we are. Okay? And that is why it's so extremely difficult for us to stand by and look at these situations and see what's going on and accept it. I can tell you a story of Mr. Chris Diali. I might have said this before. This gentleman, a very long time ago, when he worked and managed Sis and Spain out in Grand Anse Valley, okay? His brother and I was, pretty close, okay? And his brother and I, when we were also in, as we say, IFE, National College back in the days, this gentleman, Mr. Chris Diali, would have us come down after work to his workplace. And he again would have helped us with math when we were in IFE National College or TM Marshall College, whatever you call it now. This is a sort of love and support. So a lot of the things we've done and have achieved was not done in a void. Okay? It was the society at large that helped us out and took care of us and looked out. Okay? This is the sort of society that we grew up in. I can tell you a story about the late Dr. Raphael Fletcher. When he realized the potential, again, when we were in IFE, National College, Marshall Community College, when he realized of a couple of, friends and I, about 3 of us, okay? And on a Saturday, the gentleman was living in the St. James Hotel close to, the hospital. And he said, look, I want you guys to come on a Saturday and I would help you guys out with math. Okay? That is the sort of love that this gentleman extended. And myself and 2 other colleagues, when we were in IFE, you should go to the gentleman's place in St. James Hotel. And the gentleman will help us out. I say all of this to say that this is the sort of character of the individuals that we grew up around. So when you see we are the way we are, and when you see we're very passionate sometimes about seeing certain things that are vitriolic and vile and despicable, it is difficult. It's extremely difficult for us to stand by idly and allow these things to happen. It's sad. It breaks your heart. But it's a reflection of leadership. It's a crisis of leadership. The scriptures warns you, okay, that when you put children as your leaders, and of course the scriptures I'm sure was being metaphorical, children in terms of maturity of leadership. But when you put children and immature leadership at the helm of your society, this is the consequence. They themselves are not able to guide the people who have entrusted them to lead them. You understand? Because they themselves, their maturity, their level of maturity in leadership is wanting. And then you guys scoff and laugh at grown people who have had decade of experience in leadership. You take shades of them. You throw shades of them. This is the level of disrespect, dishonor that is being cultivated in the society. People come and laugh. Well, play a hating degree. You know what I mean? You are DJ. And they think that this is comedy. They think that's cool. So it's like, it looked like it was a den of kids. This is the sort of stuff that teenagers will say to each other. But this is the sort of people that holds the highest office in our land. And the people around them, who are elder statesmen, are afraid to give wise counsel. So the question is, what are the prospects for the future? When people who show such recklessness in leadership positions, what is the future? What is the prospect for Grenada? I'm sure you can answer that question better than I, because you live there. But then again, let's get back now to that gentleman who I initially started off with, who used to also help us out while we were in IFE and give us a little tips. And I'm talking about no other than Mr. Gerard Sensei. And in some respect, I was one of the few men that had the guts to call out the PM when he tried to denigrate possessors of PhDs. So salute again to you, Mr. Jared Chinsey. Okay? There's a gentleman who has always had character, has character, and will always stand up for people who are being attacked. I'm not surprised that Mr. Sincere did that. Okay? I'm not surprised. As I said, I know the gentleman personally. We've had many a great times in the past. And those who know him will know that he'll take you out on the court. He's a sharpshooter. But anyway, but again, I like to applaud the gentleman for at least having stand up for Dr. Justine Pierre. Okay? So as I said, I believe the PM, by throwing shade, sort of tells us, you know, he's not in a position to get adulation for possessing a PhD or, you know, having a doctorate. So what does he do? He denigrates people who have a doctorate. That is the level of intense, in some respects, I believe, narcissism. That is not an opportunity for him to get adulation. So what does he do? He throws shade on people who possess that probably something that he wants to achieve or wished that he achieved. You know, and so when you see me talk about these paper-pushing lawyers, sometimes it's deliberate. Okay? Sometimes it's deliberate. And careful and considerate. And for the young people, I'll have you know that in some respects, Dr. Justine Pierre is much more analytical, reasonable, and engages in much better critical thinking than the PM. So here is some shade. At least Dr. Justine Pierre does not throw himself in the middle of a geopolitical spat as some sort of interlocutor between the United States and Venezuela that ultimately led to serious consequences for the people who he was entrusted to lead, and still have not learned anything from that experience, but in the thirst for adulation comes out and says how much he embraces another potentially problematic situation in the Caribbean. So, Dr. Justine Pierre, I know how much statistics and probability which you would have had to engage in your line of work. So I can only imagine your level and ability to analyze situation. So, analyze this situation of them throwing shade on you and see it for what it is. It may be some sort of jealousy of sorts.
And you'll always have those with a PhD.
With a PhD?
Yes.
What is, do tell.
Yeah, DJ, I think you know. Pursue a player hating degree.
A player hating degree?
Yes, PhD.
Wow.
So the bottom line is this. Dr. Justine Pierre, you have done it in terms of your academic achievement, and you will continue to inspire many a Grenadian youth along the path of securing their doctorate. I know also, I heard of a story. They also went after Dr. I think Jocelyn Peters. You know, education was something that was looked up to, you know, highly respected in Grenada. And I'm sure it still is. But one or two people will, you know, infiltrate media and talk down about this sort of stuff. And they don't understand, or maybe they do understand, the implications of what they're doing and saying. That is not responsible leadership. That is reckless leadership. You cannot in one breath say, oh, here is scholarship so people can pursue all different degrees and stuff, and then you turn around and you throw shade and you disrespect and dishonor possessors of doctorates. Sadly, the vile people who attacked Dr. Justine Pierre, we see more and more with all this vitriol in the public space, we see more and more these people find a home in the NDC. Is that a coincidence? That they will find a home in the NDC? Is there some sort of comfort or climate within the NDC that promotes or encourages that sort of behavior and welcomes that sort of behavior? That is the question that needs to be asked. The question is, if this is the sort of people that act in such reckless manner, and they hold the reins of government, they hold the power within the society, and they have in some respects the ability to determine the trajectory of people's career and people's lives and their livelihood, and they can act in such callous manner, such reckless manner. I don't know. The question is to ask yourselves, are these the sort of people that we want to hold the reins of power and government in the society? But the bottom line is this: as we have always said at the GSDP, the Grenada Social Democratic Party, we will continue to be the defenders of Grenadians, far and wide. Okay? So we will not cower, we will not back down, but we will confront head on this sort of despicable behavior. The GSDP is your only hope for a better Grenada and a better tomorrow. Given the opportunity, we will transform the physical landscape of Grenada. We will transform the social landscape of Grenada. We will transform the cultural landscape of Grenada. And we will transform the politics and government and governance of Grenada. That is why I always encourage you. We've already started doing stuff like that. And I encourage you to not forget Mr. Nicholas Macmillan, our candidate for the St. George Northeast, which has been punching through the walls of the weak hearts, the weak candidates in the St. George Northeast, and he will continue to elevate himself and do what he has to do for the people of St. George Northeast. Mr. Nicholas Macmillan, your candidate for the St. George Northeast constituency. Look out. The GSDP, the Grenada Social Democratic Party, is coming to your doorstep next to you.